one of the things is this industry it's populated by such wonderful human beings, especially the ones behind the stage who don't get acknowledged a lot and don't necessarily have the support. And I think both Zack and I, in our own sort of worlds, watched really good people suffer in this industry. And I think we're drawn, and I was certainly drawn to being able to sort of stem the tide. I think spiritually, we believe that if you're exposed to a problem in the world or a area of human suffering, it's because maybe you have something that you could do about it.
Welcome to the Gigs Podcast, live from Lititz. I'm your host, Nikki Sanz, and we are filming on campus in Rock Lititz at the conference. So we get to sit down with the very best in the touring and live event industry. So let's get into it. All right, we got Zack on. He is a licensed therapist and also the co-founder of Amber Health, which is the music industry's only full-service mental health and wellness provider. He's worked with Sony Music, Claire Global, and artists like Olivia Rodrigo, Green Day, Ed Sheeran, Billie Eilish, and more. Zack, thank you so much for doing this today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so fully licensed therapist.
Yeah.
Started this company.
Yeah.
Take me back to why you got into the mental health space in the first place.
Short answer is I was a songwriter for about 10, 12 years prior to becoming a therapist. And through my own experience, the communities around me saw the struggles firsthand that were happening within the artist community and the music industry at large. And as I was becoming more and more unhappy with the pursuit of being a songwriter and a musician, I needed to find a pivot and was seeing the mental health struggles of everybody around me and kind of landed on this. I was bartending at the time, so I was sort of a de facto therapist. So thought maybe I could actually get paid to do this. And
bartending and barbers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I went back to school and got my master's degree and always was laser focused on this community, this population. And so after I graduated with my master's degree, I got in my car and drove out to LA, and no job, no apartment, no nothing, and started working clinically there and built a practice. And then over the years was introduced to my co-founder, Dr. Haim Newman, and we shared a similar vision on both the struggles that were happening and how to therapeutically help this community at scale. And thus Amber Health was born. And, here we are about 4.5 years later, making what I think is a real difference in this community and in a community that is often overlooked, specifically on the crew side.
Yeah,
so we work a lot with the crew of tours and here we are doing the work.
Congrats on taking the risk and building a company.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to get into Amber Health. But before that, did you specialize in this industry, crew or artists, when you were in LA and starting your practice?
I came from the recording industry side of the business. So I think as I was always laser focused, but very conscious about helping creatives. I think my vision initially was, I'll have this private practice of artists. Maybe I'll be in-house at a label or something like that.
Yeah.
When I landed in LA, I was the director of a drug and alcohol rehab. And what I was seeing pass through the rehab were artists, managers, agents, crew.
Whoa.
So it was sort of seeing that this was a more systemic problem.
Wow.
And thus expanded sort of the scope of what was happening. I think the live touring side, I was a solo artist, so I would just get in my car and drive in the Northeast from city to city and sort of do that thing. So I never toured on a large scale. So the touring industry has been something that I've spent a lot of time learning about over the last 5 or 6 years. And Haim comes from a more touring background and had some interesting data on what was happening in the touring industry. And then I was exposed to this very high level touring apparatus, and it was so obvious
Yeah.
as soon as I started being around it, being involved in it, what the issues were happening within the touring community.
Oof.
We always say that it doesn't matter what corner of the industry you look at, whatever stone you uncover, turn over, there's some sort of mental health issue happening. So this is tour specific, but it's also very industry specific as well.
You kind of have to be on the inside in order to turn the right stones.
Yeah, and I think that's what really makes us unique in what we do.
Yeah.
Is that we come from the industry. Our team of clinicians come from the industry. And so when we onboard new people or new therapists and we bring them in, we are very, very methodical and specific about who we bring in, who is going to work therapeutically with us, because we have to make sure they understand the industry, because that trust is everything in this work. And so what we find a lot on the tours or with even HR companies is that what we offer them is this highly specialized, experiential understanding of what the issues and challenges are. And I think that makes the work happen quicker on a therapeutic level. It allows people to trust us differently and allows us to get in there and do the work more effectively.
Therapy changed my life. I went for the first time a few years ago, and oh my gosh, what it can uncover about you.
What was it? Not like not the issues, but I'm curious, like the process of like what did you find was impactful without getting into like the details of what
let's do it.
was. This is the risk of sitting with a therapist.
I know, shit.
We're like,
good thing I love it.
We're good at turning the table here.
What's funny is I went because I was like going through a breakup for the like a heartbreak, and it's funny that when you go for the first time, you don't realize that you're going to start just talking about your parents and your childhood, and you just and realizing all of these different things about why. I'd always been interested in psychology, and I'd always been interested in why I operate the way I do, but finally seeing, and this is why that, and this is why I feel hurt or wherever, and uncovering those things, just being aware of it is where you find that freedom. But I will say, I didn't go to an industry specific one. And so I really didn't talk much about touring or the life, because even just explaining it takes forever to someone who doesn't get the life. They don't get that. Oh yeah, well, try sleeping more. Well, you can't.
Totally.
So, having someone who totally understands what it takes to be on the road, why people love being on the road, and then also what are the issues that we actually can deal with. But we know you want to stay in the industry. You can't just leave it.
I think that's exactly right. And it's spot on. And it is something we deal with every single day.
Yeah.
But you're right. A lot of traditional trained therapists don't know how to operate in this space because the lifestyle, the incentive structures, the apparatus are so different than anywhere else in the world. And until recently, there was really no specialization in this sort of field. And we know that the mental health issues of those in touring specifically are astronomically higher than the general population. And so Haim and I will make the argument all day that this is a vulnerable population of people. Why that is, we probably don't have enough time for.
Which sucks. We need to do a longer one. But yes, okay.
It is, and I think part of it is things you touched on, where we come from, what pulls somebody into this business, which is crazy. I heard a panel yesterday and someone was saying it's not a normal environment for someone to be thrown onto the road with 100 people living on a bus with them, all strangers, and you're like, here, go build the biggest thing in the world and then break it down and do it again. It's not a normal sort of environment or experience. So we always say it might self-select for a certain type of person who wants to kind of join the circus in a way.
Yeah.
And then you have all the contextual stressors of the industry, lack of sleep on the road, away from your family, ease of accessibility to drugs and alcohol, high pressure, all of the things that we all know and everybody who's probably listening to this know. And then we end up with rates of depression, anxiety, suicidality that are much higher than other populations.
Wow.
And part of the development of Amber Health was we need a clinical workforce who fully understands this and can be more effective therapeutically. And that's what Haim and I have been working on for years, and are growing this now and have amazing people who we bring in and amazing clinicians who really know the language and the landscape.
What year did you guys start this?
2021 was when we first launched. We had spent about 6 months writing a white paper on the mental health of the industry and how COVID had sort of changed it.
That's what I want to talk about, yeah.
And we looked at the opportunity that the industry kind of had to change, and that got disseminated throughout the industry. And Haim and I kind of made a list of every industry contact that we had, and we started cold calling them.
There we go.
And this is what we're doing. This is what we're trying to do. And I'm sure, as you know, one person believes in what you're doing, who then introduces you to the next person, who then, and, you know, that sort of connecting of the dots starts happening. And, you know, this industry is not without its tragic events.
Tragic.
And not only from the public facing side, but from the crew side, who doesn't ever get any attention. No one ever talks about that. And so I think we managed to meet some really amazing humans who had access to more people in the industry that we didn't have access to, who walked us into meetings and walked us into the buildings of the places that we couldn't get into. And we're very lucky that some companies and some individuals and production managers and tour directors took a chance on us and believed in us. And then slowly we started doing the work. And I think ultimately showing up in the times of need.
Yeah.
We're not very public facing. We don't have a big social media presence. We really believe in getting in there and doing the work.
That wouldn't really be the vibe,
you know,
the industry or the work you're doing.
But it can be, unfortunately, in the mental health space. I mean, you know, mental health, and
I follow all of them.
It's like, you know, it's a thing.
You're a narcissist and you're a narcissist here.
Yeah. I mean, so it's definitely like in the ethos now.
Totally.
And we have sort of made a decision to fully do the work.
It's amazing.
Be committed to the work. And we couldn't do this without our partners and the people who are putting this into the line item on their budget, calling us in the crisis, are making the financial commitment to bettering their people. And bigger artists are now doing this every tour leg they go out, and it is expanding because it becomes permissive, right? Once you say that, holy shit, I went to therapy and it helped me, somebody else might go, oh, maybe I should try that too. And that's what is, I think that's what's happening. There's like a shift in vibe, and there's a shift in the way that we talk about it. But then as more artists, more companies, more organizations in the industry recognize this, it gives it a permission structure to do it.
I always worry about saying this like on podcasts, but I was living on a bus with someone with substance abuse problems. And there was one instance where it was really, really bad. I had to go to the hospital with this person, and I was so unequipped to deal with any of this. And then there was no discussion or anything. How do you deal with that for the rest of the year on a bus with someone? And so are you responsible for this? How, you know, where are your boundaries with this? And then also, you know, then when COVID happened, like it got dark with a lot of people that I knew very well, because then it's your identity. What do you do when your identity is gone? So not only for the people who are suffering, but then the people who feel, and I found out I was codependent in therapy. Hey-o. So what do you do when you feel responsible for caretaking?
Which is not an uncommon characteristic for people in the music industry.
Interesting.
Which, you know, that's a whole nother
and
podcast.
Probably a production assistant as well.
Totally. But it is this selfless, doing for others, all of that stuff. I mean, even in what you just said, the substance use, people being ill-equipped to handle it, COVID, these are all things that we could spend 2 hours talking about on why they are affecting the people in the industry so deeply. But I think the one thing I will say is that you're 100% right, is that most people are ill-equipped to deal with these heavy issues. And then you're trying to move a tour and you're trying to do your job. And we hear it on the tour leadership level all the time. We hear it in the HR departments of companies. We hear it at the executive levels in companies who are saying, my people are suffering. They come to my office. I'm the de facto therapist, whether you're a production coordinator, there's somebody on a tour usually, or two people, right, who sort of absorb all of that.
Oh, yeah.
And they have to do their job and not be the sort of therapist, if you will. One of the things that we have built at Amber Health is to be an objective addition into the crew. And so we want to embed ourselves into the crew, and the way that we have it designed, which we don't have to go into detail right now, but is built specifically for touring effectively, where it will be cost effective, not too much of a burden on, it's not like we're taking up a slot on the bus and like we're not integrated into the day to day, but we want to be a part of the team. So when there is an issue, people come to us. And the most successful tours that we have had, you know, Olivia Rodrigo being one of them, it was came from the top. So Marty Haim brought us in, and that was incredible, but artist buy-in, team buy-in, and
it's a leadership.
Well, the utilization was through the roof.
Wow.
Hundreds of hours of clinical support on that tour.
Wow.
An example of how this can look. And, you know, it's cool. We're doing a lot of stuff. We're figuring out how to do it at that really high level, but also what about the tours who can't afford it?
Yep.
And so we're building new ways of trying to figure out funding mechanisms to get van tours, one bus tours, smaller tours, access to our care. And we have some great partners like the Country Music Association and Music Cares. And these are the support systems that we have around us that are allowing us to do the work, which is allowing us to scale the work to a lot of the people who might not normally be able to have access to this care. So,
well, and if you're talking about Marty Haim, this man loves his crew. And when he says like, you got to care for them, this is the way. My thought is like, how many people have been like, great, we have a tour party and they got like a magician, which I love a magician, but dude, why don't you spend the money on something where you're actually caring for the crew in the way that maybe they don't even realize? And I'm sure you guys do it in a way where like, you know, there's no shame. There's no one knows what's going on. But instead of your dude losing his shit on a stagehand and throwing his helmet against the wall or whatever, you know, could potentially cause major relational issues with the venue or with the steward or whatever.
On the team.
Or the team.
The person who's maybe mixing the show next to them.
Fired.
Totally.
Just, hey, you know, that person knows he's not well. He has the resource to go and will go do that. And then everyone else can be okay.
Yeah. And the evolution of what we've been doing is there's sort of that one-on-one level when people need it in the anonymity that you speak of, but also we are brought in for conflict resolution.
Oh, wow.
So we are brought in.
HR, baby.
We are brought in,
finally.
Right? So if we have a strong enough relationship with the tour leadership who knows us well enough, they will oftentimes call us and say, how do we handle this situation? We had 2 days ago with a very, very large tour. B-Party road manager needed help with something. And so we got on the phone with them and helped manage. So you don't have to maybe let that person go. And you see the issue happening and you can stop it from escalating.
Wow.
Which, you know, I think saves time, saves money, saves effort, all of the things. So it's direct and it's indirect. And I think done well, it's almost like you kind of don't even know it's there. It's in the background. It's like a lot of crew people, kind of in the background, but it's effective and allows the show to operate better, less risk. There's a financial reward to it that for the people who get it, they get it. And I think part of this too is just educating the industry more broadly on how these services can, from a human level, take care of people, which is the most important thing. But unfortunately, it's an economic industry. And so this does have economic value as well. And we're continuing to prove that and show that and advocate on why this is not only good for the humans and the people, but it's good business also to take care of your people.
And I think that all of these panels are also talking about, we care less on bringing the new workforce in on technical skills. We care way more on the interpersonal skills and leadership skills, which what you're just saying of how you guys came in to help handle conflict. How are you going to learn that until you do it sometimes on the road? And so if you have an aide that knows the industry and knows how to manage interpersonal conflict.
Yeah, and it's not anybody's fault either. It is just the way for decades and decades and decades that this industry has operated. And there's a lot of, I don't want to say ill-equipped people, but just people who don't realize that there's another way, which is like the fascinating part about like your therapy story in a sense, which is like, I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that you could have a perspective over here that's different. And I think part of at Amber Health, what we're trying to help the industry see is like, just because you've been doing something one way doesn't mean that you can't shift it to another. You don't have to lose your economic viability and your creative viability and all the things you do incredibly well, but you can just do it in an environment that's a little better supported to catch people if they're falling.
Do you live in LA now?
I do live in LA.
Okay. Well, when you guys are back in Nashville, we're going to do a much longer.
Cool. And
I want to nerd out on some psychology with you.
Cool. I love it. I love it.
Thank you so much. Let's get Haim on, and thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Of course.
This episode is brought to you by Gigs, the professional career platform for the live event industry. So if you're looking for jobs in the live event space, or if you are hiring in this industry, go to gigs.live, become a professional, become an employer, start posting jobs and applying to jobs now. Join our community of tens of thousands of professionals in this industry. We have events around the country. We have employment opportunities. We have entertainment. We have education. So join Gigs today, gigs.live. Also, please go give us a 5-star review and follow us on our socials at gigs.live. Now we got Dr. Haim Newman, who is the co-founder of Amber Health and a clinical psychologist. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having us here.
So take me back to why you got into psychology in the first place.
The back part of the backstory is my dad was a concert producer and my mom was a therapist.
Whoa.
So in some ways, I guess you could say this is in my genetics. You know, in my own sort of like the experiential side was, as a kid, I grew up loving puzzles, word puzzles, visual puzzles. And I think human experience is the most interesting puzzle in a way, and why we show up the way we show up in the world. And that always fascinated me and sort of led me down a road to pursue a journey in psychology as a career.
Is there always an answer for why? Like, have you found that there is, this? Okay. Like, because psychology is always, the language, and everyone just is, you basically can read minds is kind of how I see it.
What's interesting is it's actually one of the things that it's a subtlety, but why is always a bad question to ask.
Tell me
because the truth is, when you're looking at someone's behavior and you're like, why are they doing that? The answer might be every experience they ever had in their entire life that led to that moment has in some way impacted them, right? And so, it's interesting to understand how the things fit together. But the truth is, we never even know. And it's like the why you're sitting in that chair, right, could be what you saw growing up, your experiences being socialized in school, the culture you were in, the community you were in, people you encountered along the way, and 10 other things. And we'll never know if we hit the exact why.
I just always feel like, I really do feel like I'm in therapy. This is awesome right now. I just feel seen.
I'm glad.
I feel very seen. But I do feel like you guys have such a cool lens studying human behavior. And so you've always were fascinated in that. You studied it, and then you began practicing, or take me through that.
Started working in the music industry when I was 16 years old, making cheese platters at music festivals on hospo teams and doing artist relations at festivals, which eventually led to being on the core team that ran a festival in Europe and working on the road. And I think, one of the things is this industry it's populated by such wonderful human beings, especially the ones behind the stage who don't get acknowledged a lot and don't necessarily have the support. And I think both Zack and I, in our own sort of worlds, watched really good people suffer in this industry. And I think we're drawn, and I was certainly drawn to being able to sort of stem the tide. I think spiritually, we believe that if you're exposed to a problem in the world or a area of human suffering, it's because maybe you have something that you could do about it.
and hence why you guys were brought into this world. Wow. What did you think about festival life?
True to probably many parts of the industry, it's this. It's both things at once. On the one hand, it's the 19-hour days for 2 weeks in a row that could nearly kill you physically and exhaust you emotionally. And there isn't space for your own feelings and your own needs. And you have to disrupt your routines and your relationships. And also, it always has been one of the most magical parts of this industry to me, and the camaraderie of festival teams. And it's like, you're all going to war together, right? And we always see there's parallels between sort of the military experience and the music industry experience. But, you know, when you're in this sort of like complicated, stressful, mucky thing, but you're all in it together, and there's a really deep bond that's formed between people. And then also the magic of watching, you know, a headline act or a sunset, you know, show on the stage, and the crowd just fully present and vibing off that is, it's why we do what we do.
True that. Is that what you call trauma bonding?
Yes and no. You know, I don't know that. You know, I think we throw that term around a lot in this industry. And, you know, I'm wary of like, there's small T trauma and big T trauma. It's like, it's small T trauma bonding.
Totally. Yes. I my first festival I worked in, picking up the cable in the urine soaked field with my friend that I had, you know, bonded with for a solid 7 days straight, was our small T trauma.
Totally. Well, that's getting closer to the big T already. Okay, but it's, but you know, I think one of the things is when you join this industry, it's like, no one tells you that you're going to have to stick your hand into like a urine soaked field, you know, and you're like, and people outside of the industry, it's one of the reasons why the way Amber Health functions is all of the team, whether the therapists or like the team in the office, so to speak, all come from this world, is because if you don't, you're like, oh, it's all glamorous and, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And you don't understand what it actually is. And
when you know what it actually is, the question is always, why don't you just leave? And it's like, oh, but you don't get it.
Right. Totally. Well, and that's it. And the truth is people don't leave. And it's not because it's a toxic relationship they're stuck in. They don't leave because there's something in it that's still meaningful to them. Yeah. And it gives them a sense of purpose. And whether that's the camaraderie or what you hear from people all the time, the moment the house lights drop and the crowd screams, you know, and there's something magical. And we don't want to have the only option be like, oh, well, it gets bad enough, you just have to leave. And sometimes you do. Yeah. But what we're trying to build is sustainability from a human perspective. And how do you make this industry a place that's still stressful and still all the things, but at the same time, we're able to do it in a way where we can also acknowledge our humanity, care for our humanity, and be a human first and music industry person second. That's
so beautiful. So you're working festivals. What comes next for you?
Began to get exposed to the business side of the industry. Okay. And I think in the business side of the industry, I saw a lot of ego, a lot of greed, you know, things that a lot of people being mistreated by like the corporate of the industry or being neglected. And I think it turned me off from it. And I sort of pivoted and left for a while working the industry and went and pursued undergrad, master's, PhD, all the sort of the road academically to become a psychologist. And when that finished in 2013 and I started working in private practice, I started getting phone calls from people I'd known from all the years in the industry, basically saying, hey, like, you're one of the few people who's got all this like wealth of training and academic experience and also understands us. Would you work with my artist? Would you work with this person in the industry? Began to do that in a small scale because as an individual therapist, you know, we could see 40, 50 people a year. And then when Zack and I were introduced, I think originally in 2019, you know, one of the things we identified, we're like, cool, like we're doing this like great thing as therapists and making a difference in 50 people's lives every year. And it's like, but this industry has 150,000 people in it, and who's taking care of them? And thinking about what do the models look like for systemic change and to be able to support an industry at scale. And I think one of the things, you know, we're proud of as we do this end of the year sort of accounting of the impact that we've been able to make. And this past year at Amber Health in 2025, I think we supported almost 4,000 people in the industry.
Wow.
Came through either individual sessions or group sessions or workshops and trainings. And
wow.
And so little by little, like we're doing it. We're slowly being able to create this thing that I think Zack and I saw, which was the potential for an industry that lives healthier.
The potential for the industry that lives healthier. That's what all these conferences are just talking about. But cheers to you guys for actually putting this together to actually help make this change.
Yeah, appreciate it. I think one of the cool things actually being at this conference for all the 4 years since it started is watching the ways the conversation has shifted a little bit.
Totally.
And from those original conversations, when we were here, sort of doing some of the talks and keynotes the first year, where the theme was like, hey, here's what support on tour looks like. Here's all the reasons, like Zack said, whether they're sort of like values-based reasons or financial reasons, why it's a smart thing to take care of your people, and trying to like get people to wrap their head around like, oh, this is even an option on our tour in our company. Those conversations have now evolved to a conversation which we heard yesterday about like, how do we write this in as a line item on a budget on every tour? And that's a step forward for us. It's no longer a like, should we do this or not? It's now a just like, how do we get the industry to get used to being like, this is a worthy investment and I'm going to pay for it. And here's how I fit it in.
Yes. Which, as someone who started a company in the industry that is helping to solve a problem, getting anyone to pay for something that they don't see the immediate value immediately, it's a challenge. So I'm so happy to shout this from the rooftops.
We appreciate that.
This is great. And it's also hard too when maybe the leadership doesn't know the impact that this could have. It's not just, oh yeah, sure, people can just go to therapy. Okay, well, I can do that on their own time. Well, what would it look like if people felt the support on the road? Like when people have to, who is their person that they go to? Okay, it's usually the tour manager. The tour manager cannot be HR for everyone all the time. I think that's finally starting to happen now too. So
totally.
I know Zack already kind of got into it, but do you have anything else to add of how this looks like practically with tours? So you mentioned group counseling or group workshops. Talk about the different things you guys offer.
So I think one of the things that sort of like a dichotomy in looking at it is proactive and reactive. So the proactive work of training people on how to better manage their internal experience as they're out on the road. We do a lot of that, whether that's individually or in groups. But I think the other side of it is when there is a crisis, right? Like we do a lot of crisis management work. And unfortunately, when you take thousands of people or on a given tour, let's say hundreds of people, and you move them around the world at a rapid pace to do really intense things in 19-hour workdays, it's like things fall apart and crises do happen more than I think any of us in this industry would like. And those two things go hand in hand because when we work proactively with people, they're better equipped to deal with their experience in crisis. But it also means that we've built relationships. And like Zack was saying, there's something about integrating. We're not a passive service where we put a therapist in an office and they just sit there and maybe someone comes and sees them and maybe they don't. We're learning the names of every person on a tour, understanding the dynamics and the communication structures in every department on a tour so that we're able to intervene when things start to sort of struggle or fall apart. And we're responsive, right? They've already built a trust. We walk in and to a day on a tour and we already know everybody and they already know the clinical team. And there's a comfort level which allows for us to then do that work both proactively and in moments of crisis.
You were saying you understand like the dynamics of each department, because that's the whole other world too, is none of these camps work the same. Everything is different. And so I think that this would help also in the retention of people. How do we keep people? Because something that we talk about all the time is the isolation and the solitude people feel when they're out, they're living with a bus or living on a bus. They're around people constantly, but it is some of the loneliest times I've ever experienced around tour. And so if you had someone that did see you and it is there to genuinely to see you, then, I mean, you feel a little less alone.
Well, and if you think about it as a crew member, if you have the option between, right, and most crew members are freelancers, most are not on retainer.
Yeah.
And you get to choose, you know, we're sitting talking to everybody here at the end of the year about like, hey, what are you thinking about doing in 2026?
Yeah.
And do you want to choose a tour that has no support available for you and is going to sort of work you to the bone and not factor in the fact that your human experience matters? Or do you want to work on a tour where it's like, this is available to underwritten by the tour, and there's going to be people around who, like you said, who see you. And sometimes it's just walking over to every crew member at the end of the show and being like, hey, you did great tonight. I saw that. I saw you. I saw you. And in that validation, and it's not that leadership doesn't value them. They just don't have time because they also have to do their jobs.
Don't have time.
Right. And it's not their job to do that. Right. And so for crew members, who wouldn't want to work on a tour where they had support available, were seen, felt valued in that way as a human being? And I think that's where the tide of this will shift, when enough tours provide the support that crew members can begin to choose and go, you know what, like, I want a tour where I know the environment's going to be healthier and less toxic because there's support and care there for me. And from the top, from the artist and the management and the people that ultimately make these decisions, clearly they're thinking about me.
We just ran a poll yesterday on our social media about, would you care more about pay versus communication and leadership and like vibe of the camp? And it was drastically the leadership and communication and vibe.
Which is consistent, by the way, with all the research in the corporate world that suggests that if you give people a money bonus versus if you do something for them that's sort of feels personal and meaningful, it's like 1,000 out of 1,000 times people are going to choose the thing that's personal and meaningful over just getting a bump of 5% on their paycheck.
What do you hope shifts and changes over the next 5 years?
I mean, I think we've always had this vision of this becoming normalized, of mental health care becoming normalized in the industry, in the same way that, you know, we always give the example of like tour catering wasn't a thing, 30 years ago, and you just ate local catering wherever you went. And now it's normal on every arena and stadium tour that they take catering with them.
Wow.
I'm hoping that eventually mental health support will look the same way. So I think that's one piece of it. I think also that shift from tours only calling in a crisis to more and more tours being able to be like, hey, we're going to do this starting in advance. And then I think the other piece of it is continuing to grow the infrastructure, which means good research into mental health and the gold standard mental health approaches. We'll talk about in the coming months. We conducted a huge study with MusiCares on 3 of the largest tours in the world this summer. And the findings from that we're going to release early in 2026. So more research, continuing to evolve the trainings and eventually academic programs that we're building now for people from the industry who want to pivot to becoming therapists. And so many of them are so skilled intuitively at it, but just need the right training. And we've spent years now, really spearheaded by Zack, building those trainings. And I think as we do that, our, sort of army of people that will be able to deploy to provide this support as the industry is more and more ready to receive it. Those two things have to go in parallel. I think that's really the vision 5 years from now, is an industry that's all in on caring for its people and a deep and comprehensive team that's able to go provide that support.
And I think Zack mentioned at the beginning that this industry is affected more than most because of the intense nature of it. And so, I mean, if you're comparing it to any other industry, that should just be like, hello. Basically, this is the first generation really of touring in general. So now we're just getting our shit together and we're going to put some systems in place to make it healthier and better and livable.
Totally. Well, and if you compare it to some other high stress industries. And we actually have an academic paper coming out on this in mid 2026, looking at parallels between the music industry and other high stress industries in terms of mental health outcomes and things like that.
What are the other ones?
It would be things like first responders, ER doctors and nurses. And it turns out, I'll give you the teaser, which is, and it's a scary thing, is that adverse mental health outcomes, levels of depression, anxiety, suicide risk are higher in our industry than almost every one of those. There's only one other industry in the world that parallels the rates of all of those things, which is the military.
Wow.
And it's an interesting thing, right? Because, you know, our lives aren't quite at risk in the same way as those in the military, but yet our rates of all of these significant mental health challenges are as high. But if you look at the military, they've spent 100 years developing programs to address these things. And it's exactly what you said, Nikki. We're just starting now as an industry to be like, okay, cool. What does that look like to take care of our people? And I think we feel very, you know, it's like, it's humbling to be like the ones on the front lines, getting to do that. And I think being able to do the research and develop the programs and then implement the programs to set the stage for what the next 50 years of gold standard human care is going to look like in this industry. Well, it's like you said in the beginning, in some ways it's not like this isn't a job for us. This is a calling and a life's work for every person that works with us. And, it's really amazing to be able to do it with amazing advocates and champions from within the industry who are the glue that helps this happen. And, I'm excited. I think the years ahead are going to bring real positive change that's going to alleviate a lot of suffering in people's lives.
I can't wait to watch this back in a few years and say, how the hell was it's just the beginning. I cannot wait to follow you guys through this. And when you come to Nashville, we'll get a much longer episode because I have too many questions, that we don't have time for. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah. Grateful to sit here with you. Thank you.